Okay, so I've mounted the box for the thermostat that's going to drive the floor heat. And down in the sole plate, if you remember, there's the hole where the wire is coming through the floor and into the bathroom from the panel. And it terminates in the box here. So the box, if you look on the side here, has a bracket. This is a 4-inch square box. And it's got this bracket on the side that has a couple ears. There's one right there and one right here. And those ears grasp onto the end of the stud so you can locate the box correctly. And then once you get it positioned, there's a tab right there and a tab right down here that you drive into the side of the stud. After that, I drilled a couple holes right through here and here so I didn't split the wood. Did the same thing down there. And then I drove two 1 1/4 inch screws up at the top here and then 2 screws down here. Okay, so I've got 3 connectors attached to this box. I've got the Romex connector up here, and I've got 2 liquid tight connectors on the bottom of the box. This one is 3/4 of an inch, and this one is 1/2 inch. What I'm going to be using the conduit for is to feed the power lead and the sensor to the floor. I thought it'd be easier to do that with conduit versus trying to fish it through the wall. Okay, so now that the thermostat box is installed, the next thing I'm going to do is drill a couple holes in the sole plate for the conduit. Okay, so I was trying to determine which tool I want to use based on where I want to drill these holes, and this drill is too big and the impact driver is a little bit too big, so I'm going to use the right angle driver, the small one here. That should get me pretty close to this area here. I'm trying to avoid hitting these 2 nails that are right there. So the other thing I need to be conscious of is how deep I go. So what I'm going to do is take some green tape and wrap it around this spade bit. This is a 1-inch spade bit here. Let's see if that's right there. It's probably a little lower than I want to go. I'm going to come up with just a little bit on it. See how that goes first, and then I'll go a little bit deeper if I have to. For the 3/4 inch conduit, I've determined that 1-inch spade bit is perfect for making sure that the conduit is nice and snug in the hole. And then a 13/16 bit is what I'm going to use for the 1/2 inch conduit. So I'm going to go ahead and drill one hole right here. I'm going to try to stay at about the center point of this stud, and then we'll see how that goes there. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there for now. I'm trying to avoid going through the sole plate and through the subfloor, so that's why I'm taking my time here. So I started with the 1-inch hole. I'm going to see how this conduit fits here. I've tested this in the garage also, just making a couple holes in some wood in the garage. So we'll take another look here. That's nice and snug there. So that's going to work great. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drill the 13/16 hole right next to it for the 1/2 inch conduit. Okay, so now that I've got the holes drilled in the top of the sole plate, the next thing I'm going to do is transfer the location of those holes to the side of the sole plate here, so I can drill horizontally there. Okay, so now that I've got the hole locations marked on the side of the sole plate, I'm going to go ahead and drill that way so I can meet up with the hole that's coming through the top here. Okay, so the first hole is done. I'm going to do the second hole now. Okay, so that one's done. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to chisel out a little bit of this hole here and this hole here, so that when the power lead and the floor sensor come through the hole, they kind of slope down and meet with the plywood. And what's going to happen is the floor sensor and the power lead are going to be encapsulated in self-leveling compound, so I don't want to have those sitting too high here. Okay, so now that I've finished chiseling out the holes, the next thing I'm going to do is start to attach the conduit to this stud here. Before I can do that, I need to figure out what the proper length is for the conduit, and then I'll cut it. And to cut the conduit, the best way I've found, without going out and spending money for like a PVC cutting tool or something like that, is just to use a miter box with a saw. Okay, so I'm out in the garage and I'm going to demonstrate real quick how I cut this conduit. By convention you would think that you would be sawing back and forth like this, but that didn't seem to work too well because all it did was kind of throw the conduit around all over the place. So what I decided to do instead was to hold it nice and tight here, get the saw in this groove here, and then I drew back like that and made one pass, and that established a groove in the conduit. Then I just put the saw back in that groove and just did that over and over again. And that leaves a pretty nice square cut there. Okay, so I think I've got my cuts finally finished here on this conduit. So I've got about 1/4 inch of conduit extended inside this hole here, so that when I draw the wires through here, the wires won't hit the bottom of the hole and they'll actually come down and come out. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is attach the conduit to the stud. And I'm going to be using these 1-hole straps to do that. So I have a 3/4 inch strap and a 1/2 inch strap. And the part numbers, if you're interested, is for the 3/4 inch is 96112, and for the 1/2 inch is 96111. And they're made by Halex. I got these at Home Depot. So how this is going to work is I'm going to put one strap over the 3/4 inch conduit up about here, attach it to the stud, and then I'll have another strap a bit lower on the 1/2 inch conduit. And this hole right here, this little tab on the strap, is going to go right behind the 3/4 inch conduit. And I'll just alternate down the wall until I have enough 3/4 inch and 1/2 inch straps to secure the conduit to the wall. Okay, so I've got both runs of conduit strapped to the stud, and I've got 3 straps per conduit run all the way down to the floor. So that looks good. And what I tried to do here was space the straps out about 3 to 4 inches apart at least. So right there, there's one strap for the 1/2 inch, and then the 3/4 inch strap is about 4 inches away. And that was just to make it easier to fasten the screws using a right angle driver. The other thing I had to do was I had to use 2 different screws because the holes on the straps for the screws are different for each strap. So for the 1/2 inch strap, I used a number 8 screw, and then for the 3/4 inch strap, I had to use a number 10 screw because the heads are different in size. Okay, what I want to talk about is the location of the thermostat box in relation to the other fixtures in the bathroom. So the box is located on a partition wall that divides the bedroom from the bathroom. My preferred location for that box was over here on this wall, right above the switches. But as you can see, there are a ton of wires that run along that wall, so I decided that that was probably not a good location for it. Then I thought maybe I could squeeze it in somewhere below the sconces and above the vanity, but I thought that was kind of an odd location, so I decided not to do that. The other consideration is the heat vent on the floor. So I needed to make sure that the sensor wire doesn't run too close to that heat vent. The other consideration was to make sure that I don't have this box mounted too close to the tub. So currently it's about, I would say, about 18 inches from the tub. Okay, so the next thing to think about was how high to mount the thermostat from the finished floor. And if you look right there on the wall, you see there's a 5-foot mark, and that's the typical height of a thermostat from the finished floor. I had this box mounted a few inches lower than where it is right now, but then I started thinking about things like towel bars and rope hooks and where I'm going to put those on this wall. So I had to move that box up so that I could put a towel bar right there at the 48-inch mark from the finished floor. That's the typical height of a towel bar, and that's so that whoever's in the shower can comfortably reach outside the shower and grab a towel without having to reach up or reach down. So now that this box is in and I've got all the rough end done for the thermostat, I'm going to cut the video off here, and then I'll come back a bit down the road once I get ready to put the flooring in, and I'll kind of address this again later.